Hi everyone, this is Anime Soirée. My name is Griffin. Today I'm joined with Will and Kyle, and we'll be talking about the 2018 anime movie MAQUIA. I really like this movie. It takes place in a fantasy world where our protagonist Maquia lives in a looming society with a race of basically elves, kind of, called Lorfs, and they live really long. They like looming. Every time you're introduced to their homeland, it kind of plays Azora's Domain from Legend of Zelda kind of soundtrack. It's very mystical. There's a lot of water. It's basically an idyllic society. But our main character, Makia, since birth, she hasn't really had a family. And basically, the Lorfs are displaced, and she is forced into an early motherhood of a child that is not her own. And she basically, travels throughout the fantasy world with her son, raising him, encountering many other mothers. I would call this definitely a movie about motherhood. You get to see quite a few perspectives. There's at least like four or five different moms here, and they kind of all have their own little quirks and interesting relationships with their children or lack thereof. And simultaneously there's a war going on, and it's not as important as the mom and son relationships and mom and daughter relationships going on. But I don't know. What did this movie mean to you guys? I mean, motherhood is the first thing that it's a very very sad and emotional movie, and I think the variety of relationships and uh, especially Makia with Ariel, her son. Like the last 30 minutes of the movie were just a montage of just the saddest moments I could possibly think of. It was like one by one, every mother had an encounter with their child, and it was relentless, and it definitely made me cry a little bit. But I don't know, what did this movie mean to you guys? What do you think about it?
That was really good. Yeah, like you said, motherhood's like the main theme of the movie, and I thought it executed that theme pretty well. Of course, with like Makia and her son, and like that big aging difference that is just so as soon as you like realize it, which is extremely early in the movie, it's like such a huge like tragedy that's constantly looming over the entire like movie, and like that's like the whole point of the movie, her like dealing with that and the whole thing, and like them coming to terms with it, and like how it actually takes place. And I think it's executed pretty well. um and then yeah, like you mentioned, there's like other mothers that she compares herself to. Like she learns how to be a mother from the lady who kind of takes her in, and she learns a lot from her, and then she learns from some other people along the way. And then we get a nice comparison at the end of the movie. It's like Makia has adopted this child and done everything in her power to be a mother, and even though she's not the biological mother of this child, like she is this child's mother. And then at the very end of the movie, we get to see like the complete opposite with the other Eorf that gets kidnapped, who's been away from her child the entire time. And while she is the biological mother of the child, she like really can't come to terms with the fact that she is the biological mother of the child. And when she finally does meet the child, she's like, I don't know, she's so um she's so like she doesn't know the concept of motherhood nearly as well as she thought she wanted to, and she like basically freaks out at that moment. And I don't know, I really like that contrast, like really it was kind of played throughout the movie and then executed it well at the end. Yeah, I like the movie.
Yeah, I liked it too. I mean, like for one, this is just like a very pretty movie. Like
Yeah.
the character designs are like really like clean and nice, and like there's just like a lot of really good animation, and like the backgrounds are really good too. Like the when they like go into like the city, there are like these like weird like wheels that are like always turning in the background, kind of giving it like this like industrial vibe. And so like the setting wasn't like the craziest thing in the world. It was basically just like a fantasy world, but there was just like a lot of detail put into it, so it really like pulled you in. So yeah, and like yeah, the big thing for this movie that like I think was like the most interesting thing about it was like the as Will like mentioned a little bit, like the aging difference, how basically like she's immortal compared to her son. So like, you know, by the time that he's like a teenager, he basically like looks like he's her brother, and he kind of like stops referring to her like as his mom. And that's just like so fucking sad because like, she is his mother, and she like put in like so much work, and like he just like didn't really, that was like the most emotional thing, was like him failing to like recognize, or like the arc that he went through about kind of like not recognizing all that she did for him. And like the aging difference, I feel like really just like kind of put more of like a spotlight on that, because it's like this is kind of something that like everyone goes through when they grow up. Like they kind of like drift apart from their parents more as they like
Yeah.
become more independent.
I was
um
like I was like dreading that moment. Like, oh god, he's gonna go through a rebellious teen phase. He's gonna be like, "You're not my mom." I was like, "Oh no."
yeah.
And then it happens, and then I was just, yeah. I don't know. I was really happy that what's his face like was there to be like just beat his ass and be like,
Was
"You look, it's
Lance, I
just your
think.
mom."
Is that his name?
Yeah. It's like that girl's your mom. You better fucking
Lang.
treat her well.
But yeah, I agree. The relationship between the two was pretty pretty touching. Had its ups and downs, and that last scene in the movie where um, she's on basically his deathbed, and she looks like the same as she did when they first met, and he's old, can't really move, and can't really speak, and he says like "welcome home" to her, and yeah, that was a touching moment, and I don't know, man. It's just an emotional movie. It's I don't know. I haven't really felt this strongly about the tail end of a movie in a while, because leading up to, I don't know, the last 30 minutes, like there was a lot of stuff going on with the war, and it was losing my interest. And then at the end it was like bang bang bang, like every mother encounter, and like I was a little overwhelmed. So I don't know, maybe pace it out so I'm not so emotionally overwhelmed, because it was a powerful relationship, and it was just sad, but it was sad in like a good way. And I think it's pretty hard to actually convey that. It wasn't just like a shock death. It wasn't something that, really was for plot development, even. It was just like, just the ending of a relationship and the uniqueness of it, with Maquia being immortal, or, I don't know how long they actually live for, but I guess it's immortal.
Yeah.
It
I like
gives you a different perspective on what being a mother is, I guess.
yeah. I like the theme, and it's a theme I see quite a bit in a lot of stuff where it's like better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all, where it's like she doesn't regret having that whole motherhood thing and like outliving her child. She doesn't ever regret having that interaction and that relationship. She's grateful for having it, and it's like a very important part of her life, and she would never take it away. And I think it's like a pretty common thing, but like I think it's very, very true. And I think the way they show it in the movie just really hits that home, where it's just like such an important thing to build yourself as a person. And these relationships are how you do that,
Yeah.
even
Like
if they don't end
literally,
the best.
yeah. I mean, like it was basically like always going to end like that. Like there was like
Yeah.
no way that it was ever going to end any different. And she just like, I'm sure she wasn't like thinking about it that critically, like when she first, like it was just basically an act of compassion to like take this kid in because he didn't have anyone. Um so yeah, I mean basically like, but yeah, she just like doesn't regret it at all, because like she she was able to like shape another person's life and like make the world a better place kind of like through that. It's kind of interesting because like this is like it's kind of like, I feel like the reason that a lot of people like have kids is to like leave something like into the world after they die. But this is like it's like that's not the case here, because it's like she knew that like when she like took in this kid, that like she was going to outlive the kid. So it's not like for like posterity or for like anything like that. It's just like it's almost like insignificant in comparison to like her lifespan, as opposed to like when we have kids, it'll be because like we're gonna, hopefully our kids will outlive us, and then like they'll go on to like do great things. But like this was like not the case for her. So it's kind of like it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
He was just trying to feel something, man.
Yeah. Well, I
She
mean,
was
like
kind of
that's
a
what's so great is that like she was just like it was like a spur of the moment decision. You know, it was just like I need to save this kid, and like that's the best that this is like the best way
yeah.
to do it.
She was in a pretty distraught state right after having basically being taken away from her home.
Um,
Yeah.
One thing about this movie that I thought was interesting was like the variety of motherhood. I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit, um, but I think it's an important distinction that it really does come in a lot of shapes and forms. And how many animes have you seen about motherhood? Not really a lot. Um, and I think it's a pretty interesting subject to make an entire movie about. And seeing
Mhm.
Maquia kind of like forced into motherhood as someone who is not very confident in themselves, really being responsible for not just Ariel but for Dita, and just even helping him with his own legacy in the world. And uh, I'm sure that there's more to come for Maquia, and it really helped her grow into someone who I don't even know what she does, but it seems like she I don't know if it's a profession at this point, but it seems like she just helps like raise kids. But and then what is her name? Lelia, who is someone who is very headstrong, very confident. From the brief introduction that we saw, who is forced into motherhood as well, but is really deprived of any relationship with that daughter. And being someone who is much more confident in themselves, and then basically being separated from something that you feel like you're entitled to raise and to have a part in. That must be very frustrating. And basically, at the end, Will kind of touched on it, not being allowed to pursue motherhood at that point, and it basically being too far gone. And I think that was probably the right choice as well. And then with Dita and Ariel, I guess that's more of a relationship yet to develop. Um, and kind of similar with the farmhouse family, we had Mito, and it was a single mother, and she was kind of in similar shoes as Maquia and kind of showed her the ropes. Um, it's pretty interesting, the variety in motherhood. Not something I really actively think about, and I'm glad this movie exists, because I think there's kind of a beauty in the way a relationship between a parent and a child, um, you know, forms or is forced to form, and whether or not those circumstances are better for worse, that child is going to grow up, and you kind of just have to deal with the person that they grew into, whether or not you had a strong hand in raising them, or if you did a bad job, or if you're a single mother. It's pretty heavy stuff, to be honest. Kind of reminds me a bit of Tokyo. It wasn't Tokyo Chris.
Godfathers.
Godfathers.
Tokyo Godfathers, yeah, and that it's something that uh, it's a pretty tricky subject, but it's something really important to consider, because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that there is plenty of people out there that are single mothers, or are in motherhood, and don't necessarily want to be and have to be, and just asks a lot of questions, I'd say.
Hmm. And you kind of have like there are characters in the movie that are like pseudo mothers as well. Like you have like the head Yorf that like she seems like a maternal figure where she's like leading over these very young looking kid. Yorf, I don't know, they could be really old, but they all look like pretty young. Her and Lelia, and she seemed like a very maternal uh, figure over these kids while they were doing their looming, and like how she spoke with Makia, she seemed like a maternal figure, but she wasn't like their actual mother or anything. And like those kind of that kind of figure contrasts with all the actual mothers, and you've got like some like Mito or like Maki as a mother, but then Mito kind of takes her in and kind of becomes like a pseudo mother to her,
Hmm.
um, where she's kind of adopts her, and while she's showing her rope, she's also like having to care for Makia because Makia is still very young at this point. So there's like not just like there are like strict definitions of mothers, but then you've got like the kind of the looser way of seeing it as well.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I feel like all of them are I mean, all of like the good mothers are basically just like trying to like, they're just like trying to like essentially they just make like a net positive on the world. Like they're just sort of like guiding this like new life, and they're like trying just to make sure that like it's able to like be a functioning member of society, and like not not be an asshole to people, and like just get along. And like that's kind of like that I feel like that's kind of just like the point of like raising kids, is like just a lot of people have like a negative view. They're like, oh, like, if you have a kid, like that's like fucked up, because like there's gonna be like that kid is gonna go through a lot of suffering in their lives. But I mean, there's also a lot of good things that happen as a result of that too. So it's like, yeah, you might have also like you might have increased the amount of like sadness in the world overall, but you also increase the amount of like joy by like having and raising a kid as well. So I think that this movie is like kind of like celebrating that.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I've
basically.
kind of going into things that are a little less to do with motherhood. Um,
I
I
came on
guess
this podcast to talk about MILFs, Will.
um, I guess if I had to say one thing that I've seen people harp on that they didn't like and that I would also agree with would be, I don't know. I was okay with the plot. I just thought it was a bit too much of a focus. Like I there was no point while I was watching the movie where I was like, wow, the plot is really taking away from my experience right now. But I did think the plot could have been better and or less focused. Like the whole like dragon thing seemed more applicable to the queen, and it definitely was applicable to Maquia. But like it seemed like so much of a focus for something that didn't feel, for me at least, as applicable to Maquia as it was for like the queen, where it's like these people shackled, these dragons that are shackled up and they're dying in this captivity. And I guess it kind of applies to all the captive Yorfs, but I don't know. It seemed like such a big focus for something that didn't have as much of a payoff, I guess. Um, and it didn't take away from that much for me, but it was kind of weird to me, I guess.
It lost my interest for sure. It was, like I said, like kind of like the middle of the movie. Every time it was talking about like the politics of the nation, I was like, dude, like I just don't care that much. And
Yeah.
an interesting dynamic is that every woman in this movie is basically either a mother or a child, except for maybe the introduction. That actually, every character that's like being introduced is a mother or a child. I'm pretty sure. If you guys could think of one that's not, let me know.
Isn't that true
Uh,
for every woman ever?
well, you could
Well,
be a
not
young
grown women
adult.
that haven't had
Yeah,
children yet.
exactly. Like there's no grown
Oh,
women that don't have children in this movie that are
but
introduced.
every woman's been a child at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah, okay. Well, ignore that part then. You're right. Okay. Um, every woman that is,
No, I see what Griffin's
yeah,
saying.
of
Yeah,
the
like basically,
ability.
it kind of just like this movie like assumes that like when I mean I'm not it assumes, but like every character that is portrayed basically is like if they're of age to have a kid, they have a kid.
And every man in this movie, besides Ariel and Lang, I'll say every man in the government really is just kind of like clueless or aggressive or I don't know. It's confusing. I guess Isol, I guess, is an interesting character. Maybe.
Isol seems so. He seemed like he had a plot going on, and then there was no payoff.
I know. That's why I said interesting. Maybe, right? Because
I was
it's
like,
like
all right, what's Isol's payoff gonna
he's
be?
been here
He
the
seems
whole
like he's got a
time.
decent heart, and then nothing really came out of it. He saves the queen right at the end, and then I don't know.
Yeah, weird,
We don't
right?
see him.
Weird.
Like I feel like that could have, like, not nearly as much focus could have been put on him, and I would have been perfectly okay with it.
And it's okay to like put men on the wayside for this movie because they don't really matter as much. But like, no, like just.
I mean, I'm not even thinking about his gender or anything. I think
I mean,
story wise, like he didn't do anything.
I would say a lot of the men in this movie, and I don't really care, are just not very developed, except for Ariel, and Lang, I guess a little bit, just because he was there and he knocked some sense into Ariel. But Isol, the king, um, we even
I mean,
had
there's
that
just not really
Barlow, I guess is his
characters to
name,
begin with.
which is the other Lorf that like helped um, Maqui at the end, and we saw him a couple times. You know, they're like around, but they're not really being developed or understood, which is kind of a
Yeah.
shortcoming.
I don't know. I don't really have a problem with that because like
Me neither.
it's a movie that's like about like motherhood, which is a distinctly female thing. So like I'm okay with like the men in the movie like not really being as important, except for like obviously like Ariel because he is like the son. So like you can't have a mother without without a child. So it makes sense for like him to kind of receive more of the focus.
Well, I feel
So
like
yeah, like I'm okay with like the fact that they
I
like
feel like
develop
there
her.
were like three tiers of development. You have Maki and Ariel, and then you have like Lelia and Lang, who both get a pretty good, decent spotlight. And then it's like everybody else. Like they, it doesn't seem like I never
Ooh,
noticed like a distinct gender gap between the
Yeah, I just feel like in
development.
general, like there aren't that many characters that really get
Yeah, and
fleshed
it's a
out
movie. Like you
besides
can't
the
develop like
main.
every character in a movie.
that's
Yeah,
fair. I just feel like they left Krim around for a while. They left Isol around for a while, and the King we saw many times, and it's like, oh, he's just clueless, and it's like, I don't know, if you're gonna make them show up a bunch of times, maybe cut out one or two of them and just isolate your focus on characters that you actually want us to care for, because the plot to me isn't that interesting, and we see the Isol and the King and the battle so many times. They're like, oh, these nations are attacking. Who are these nations? Who are these? They're
Yeah,
the other guys? I don't
I
know.
can definitely agree with some of them. Like just cut that out and put it more towards. I mean, you don't even have to put more towards Maki and Ariel because I think they get enough development. I think I don't know, like you said, focus on put that focus towards somebody more important, I guess, or at least make that focus more important by putting more focus on it, I guess. But the amount that it was focused on was perfectly in the middle where I was caring too much about something that I didn't need to care enough about or care as much about.
yeah. I mean, I feel like it probably like the best way to go about it would just be to like cut it like the stuff that like was in that kind of weird like middle zone where it's like you're giving it focus, but like it's not really important to like the main point of the story. Just because like this is like a movie where it has like a very clear like thematic like through line, and that's just like exploring motherhood in this kind of like slightly weird situation where she can't age. um so like anything that like isn't related to that, I like doesn't really need to be in the movie, like it doesn't need to get much focus at all. So yeah, like I would be fine with like just the movie being shorter and like that there being
Yeah,
less of
I'd
that
agree.
stuff.
Because they were so good with the time skips, right? And just like
Uh-huh.
trusting the viewer to understand that, oh, hey, time has passed and things have changed. Like, let's like pay attention. Come on. And then with this
Oh,
plot, they went into so much unnecessary detail. It's like whoever was doing the post production for editing the scenes together was not on the same page as whoever was designing the plot.
I
But
actually like, I actually like, I was completely blindsided by the first time skip where she's like showing him how to loom for the first time, and I was like, oh, that's the kid that was playing with Lang, or that's like young Lang or whatever. And then she's like Ariel. I'm like, oh shit, that's fucking Ariel.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that like the time skips were pretty well done, just like
I love it when
Oh,
getting
movies do
I
that.
think that was just me being stupid. I don't think that was a fault of them. I was just being
well,
dumb.
yeah, I mean the first one I was like, oh, that's what we're doing. But then it makes sense because like, she is experiencing time like differently because she's like an immortal being essentially. So
I love it
like
when movies do
I thought
that.
it was like I thought it was good, like seeing like the entire I mean not the entire life, but basically the entire like adolescence of Ariel,
Yeah.
like all the way until he was like um, you know, falling in love and then going to like be a father, essentially
Yeah,
like
that was another thing I was
essentially.
dreading. As soon as they showed they were doing the time skips, I was like, oh, they're gonna show him being really old. Oh,
Yeah, dude, that was like, oh my dude,
oh
like
god.
straight up, like from I mean, it was basically at the end of the movie, but like everything from like when she went to see him, like on, I was just like crying. Like I just
Dude,
could not fucking
Yeah, it
stop
I
was
think
crying.
that
rough.
scene, but then also her in like the water after he gets injured, he wakes up at like the camp and like he's like calling out to her while he's crawling through the water. I was like,
Yeah.
One curious scene for me was actually right about what you're talking about. Ariel decided to go defend the city of these assholes. This like really shitty government with an incompetent king and like a culture basically surrounding about like basically slavery, right? Like they enslaved the Lorfs, they enslaved this wyvern species as weapons of war. And Ariel makes the curious decision, I guess, to uphold his original promise to protect Maquia and his wife Dita. And they
Yeah.
lose, and he died. I mean, not he didn't die. He like, the last scene we see Ariel is him fighting pretty close to the gate, like right where the action is, and then somehow he is very far away from the action. Everybody gets captured except for him. So I don't know. He just escaped, and then simultaneously he failed to protect them. I don't know. I was just confused by that decision because like I guess he didn't know. Did he know that his wife was giving birth at that moment? He
No.
didn't. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. But I don't know. It was just a very confusing kind of structure there. The moment was very powerful, but um, I don't know. I think that as a father, and you dedicate, you make the promise to your mother that I'm gonna protect you. I don't know. I feel like protecting your wife, is more about like being there when she's giving birth. I don't know. Why didn't Maqui like go get him? I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
It was
I mean,
confusing.
I think in these like ancient time, I mean not ancient, but like in these like
Fantasy
fucking
times.
pre-modern times, like like protecting people has like it's like a much more like a concrete thing. Like there are people that want to like kill them, and you just need to kill those people. Like now, like the nebulous concept of like protecting your loved ones is like, what does that even, because we're not in like a society that like where people's lives are like constantly under threat. So
Yeah.
I think it makes sense that like protecting your family means like fighting in a battle against like the invaders. Like that makes sense. But yeah, I agree. Like there was that one part where like he was like, it just like the logistics of the battle were not very like well like established. Like when he was like at the gate versus like when he was like far away, like you said. Um, and it seemed like there wasn't like a connection between those two scenes. But at the same time, like I don't really care because it's like not that's not the focus of the movie. It's just like a big set piece to like allow for the emotional moment to happen, which is like fine. Like I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it not being like the most like detailed and like thought out battle because it's like not about the battle.
I feel like it would have made a lot more sense in the end if there was like some kind of retribution for the Lorfs as the invasion. Like maybe there was like another clan or country that like supported the Lorfs and was like, oh hey, like let's go get the Lorfs back. And then
There was like
maybe
comments. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, and then maybe like those logistics would make more sense because then Ariel would be like, I don't know. It was messy, and there's ways to solve it, and I don't know. Yeah, that whole sequence confused me. I don't know. I didn't like it that
They had
much.
like during the invasion, I could have sworn they were like commenting like, apparently there's two Yorfs on the ship in the harbor that are attacking us.
Oh
They like
yeah.
mentioned it a couple times, and I was like, okay, what are we supposed to know who those are?
No, I thought that was the dude that was coming to like say or who like was
Was that
simping
was
for
that was that Krim?
Lelia. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was Krim.
Was the other one
Who was the
Makia?
other one? No, it wasn't
I don't know who
Maqui.
the other
It
one
was
was. Well,
definitely
like
not
he
Maqui.
had like friends. Like it was just he was the only important one. Like when
So
when
that
when
was
she
Krim,
went, I think so. I think that like because that's how else would he have like gotten there? Like the fact that he like arrived like on the day of the battle, and
I
like
guess.
that
Yeah.
was when his confrontation happened. Like I just assumed that that was like that was what that was that it was Krim and like because he had friends. It's just we didn't know who they were. Like that they were trying to save Lelia.
Um, Completely different. I guess issue. In the beginning of the movie, it was like Krim, Makia, and like Lelia just like hanging, and they like got their loom materials for the day, and they went back, and Krim and Lelia like had this big family, and they were like, oh, we love each other, and then they're like, bye, Makia, go back to being without a family, and it seemed like a pretty like small, tight knit community. They all kind of do the same thing. It's pretty idyllic. Like, who's just letting this orphan girl fend for herself? Like, who's feeding her? Who's helping her? Where does she sleep? I
Yeah,
that was jarring. I had a lot of
Kind of
questions.
messed up.
yeah, it makes you think. Like
Kinda
I,
messed
like
up.
I yeah, there's a lot of like details of like the setting that are kind of like make me scratch my head like that, and like um I don't know, just like their general like standoffishness. Like when she like had a baby, like she brought. I mean, probably not the best idea to like bring Ariel with her when she like went on like the trip to like see Lelia. But they were
Yeah,
really like they were just like fuck you, like don't ever to contact me again because you have a baby. Just kind of weird.
yeah. And then like Krim was like so anti Lilia's baby as well. There was definitely some people that were like
Well,
pretty
that
angry
that
about
makes a little bit
single.
more sense.
I
Crim
That
guess.
makes
makes
a little bit
sense.
because like he was like romantically interested in her, so like
Yeah.
obviously like
Weren't
her
they
having a
brother
baby
and
with an
sister though?
No.
oh no, I didn't think so because like I thought that like there was that one part where like they like met outside at night and like um Maqui was like watching them and it definitely seemed like there was some
Were you
romantic
talking about
stuff.
Krim and Lelia?
Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
just a little confused because it seemed like they
No,
went
they were
home.
definitely
I don't know.
lovers.
I didn't know. I don't know if there's some kind of incestual nature with the Lorfs because it seemed
Well, I
like they
mean,
went
yeah, they
home.
were lovers.
It seemed like they went home
No,
to the same
no, I
family.
think that they just like there was like a lot of adults there, so I think that they like might be neighbors or something.
Okay, they're just
That's the
okay.
vibe
They
I
were,
got.
oh my god, they were roommates.
But yeah,
Yeah,
but you're right, Kyle. That was weird when Laylee was like, "You have a kid. Like, get out, leave."
yeah.
Sorry. And then
And it's like I don't know. I kind of get it. Like it's kind of like the movie is saying that like being a mother is not easy. Like you might lose some of your like friends from your previous life because I mean in real life people like that's like a full time job. Like raising kids. So like you're not gonna be able to see everyone. But I don't know. It was a little bit like I see what they were doing, but it's kind of it was like really is that how they're acting? And I guess it's like kind of like understandable because they are a like fantasy race, so like we don't know what their culture is like. I mean, they basically said like you shouldn't love anyone because like bad things will happen. And so you could kind of justify it through that lens, I guess, than being like, oh well, you're violating our societal norms. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that
that makes sense.
I think this could have, like we talked about earlier, like cutting things, and I think this movie either would have benefited from cutting some things, or honestly just being like an anime show, like a 24 episode
mhm,
anime where we really go into the culture of the Orphs and the culture of this town and like the political conflict and stuff like that. But like I or like as it is right now, like some of that stuff gets waysided or whatever, or doesn't get enough focus and stuff like that. It reminded me of like I got a lot of Violet Evergarden vibes from this movie, but
Yeah,
like more so that it took away from it. Like Violet Evergarden had its political conflict, but I don't think it ever like had as much of a spotlight as the one in this one did. Um, and it was
that's fair.
all like a vehicle for Violet's journey, and like it never like yeah like it never took that spotlight. Like it felt like the political conflict in this one did, and it didn't need to.
Yeah, that's true. But I do think that like the journey that like Makia goes on is like um just as like honestly for me probably like more resonant, like more emotionally powerful than like Violet's journey. But
Oh yeah,
I
I
don't want
think
to just
so.
like
It's more relatable
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
because
it's
with
more
Violet it's just
applicable.
like she's basically like learning how to like function as a human, and it's like
Yeah,
okay, like we learned that when we were kids, so like I get
and
it.
she's
I,
like,
I, I moved past that.
and she's like in love with a dead person, which isn't very relatable.
Hmm.
But this one's like about motherhood, which is a lot more relatable.
Yeah, because it's like we all have mothers.
Hopefully,
Yeah. I mean, this movie basically made me feel like, damn, like I really don't appreciate my mom enough because, like, this movie basically is like
this movie makes you
mom's
want to
the
give your
best thing
mom
in
a
the
hug.
world. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Because like she does so much, and she's just like barely appreciated until I mean, I'm sure that like after like Ariel was older. Like it's not like she didn't see him at all until he was like extremely old. So I'm sure that they had like a good relationship after that. But the fact that like that's all we see is just like so fucking heartbreaking. They go from like basically like him like not really acknowledging her to like he's dead now, and
Dude,
like he appreciates it.
the scenes when he was like a teenager, and it wasn't like quite in his rebellious phase. Well, I guess it kind of was, where he's working at the factory, and he's just like sitting in the bar, and like she's like, or he's basically ignoring her, and she's like just doing her job and like kind of talking to him very like tangentially, and then like they go home and he's just kind of still ignoring her, and she's like being super nice to him and just being like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll make you food and stuff like that, and it was like, oh, my heart is breaking because like he's just ignoring her.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Yes.
thankless job, and I feel like, although it was sad, it's like kind of something every mom, I think, goes through. And
Yeah,
for the most part, like, I'm sure
Yeah,
everybody at some
but it's
point
still
was like,
sad.
hey, you know,
That's actually what makes it sadder. That like
uh,
that like I mean I'm not saying that like it's like not justified to like become more independent, but like that's gotta hurt,
yeah, it
when you're like
definitely.
a parent.
I feel like in the moment I was like, yo, this Ariel kid better start shaping up. But at the end of the
Yeah,
movie, I was just like, okay, that's just, it's a part of the process.
yeah, and that's why
yeah,
Lang is there. I was so happy Lang's character was there to be like, shape up, Ariel. She's
yeah,
respecting
yeah.
you.
But I was like, thank you, Lang. Like
Yeah,
he was based.
Lang was very based.
God, dude, they really should have just isolated the story because that whole like dynamic with the family with Lang, and then he played a actually really important role I think for Ariel, and he
Hmm.
understood Maquia, and he came from like a very understandable place because he had a single mom as well. Some parts were so well executed of this movie, and I just wish the whole movie was about it.
Also, Lang had like if it was longer, they could have gotten more into like how Lang, because Lang liked Makia, and like told her that he liked her, and she was like, I can't do that, sorry. And, like that was a pretty brief thing, and they kind of hinted at it when they were younger as well. They had like that scene on the bridge, but like I don't know, that could have been gone into more. Um, and then also the character that Ariel ends up marrying, like that was very like the first scene was kind of random, where it was just like the Ariel getting bullied, and then the girl going to his house with the flowers, and then like jump forward like an hour in the movie is like, oh yeah, he married her. It's like, okay, like
Yeah,
I
it's kind of
understand that,
cute
but
though.
like I could have I yeah, but there would have been like a pretty good emotional impact, I feel like, if they had gone into it more, and I understand why they didn't because it's just a movie, but could have benefited from it.
Yep.
Quick note, I made a mention of it, but I did really, really like the music for this movie. It reminded me a lot of Legend of Zelda: Zora's Domain, specifically, and that's good ass music. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I agree. It was pretty good.
Yeah, just like the presentation of this movie was really, really strong. Like we already
Yeah,
talked about the animation and like uh the backgrounds and the
Dragon
music.
CGI
It was
was
all
yeah.
really
crazy.
I like the contrast between the animation style was like a little bit more simplistic. Pretty round, more monochromish colors, like simple outfits, and then the very detailed, pretty realistic, like as realistic as you can get backgrounds and surrounding objects. I like that contrast. It made the characters really like pop out.
I think the animation really reminded me of Violet Evergarden as well.
Yeah,
It was
definitely.
very. I mean, I think
yeah.
it's also because it's kind of like the technological era was kind of similar. Evergarden is a bit more modern, but it was kind of that half fantasy feel to it.
I will say though, I don't know if this character art would work if the details in the backgrounds and the set pieces were as if they weren't as good as they are. I don't think the art style would be as high. I wouldn't think it'd be as good as I do think it is. Um,
I don't know. I think that like the simplified kind of designs, like it can be good. I'm thinking of like Devilman Crybaby had good like character designs and stuff, and those were like very like more simplified than this. And I think that the backgrounds were like less intricate and like less but that it
Hmm.
just I think the direction in that show was so strong that
Uh,
it was kind of
I don't know, but I feel like with Devilman, like there was so much manipulation of characters. Like people were transforming into devils. There was a lot of like trippy scenes, lots of like
yeah. No,
changes
I
in
mean
the
like with like
mood.
the direction being good, like that like you're still able to like do a lot, but yeah, it just like takes um you need to go above and beyond, I guess, with like that kind of stuff. And that show definitely went above and beyond with the visuals for sure.
Um, and there's nothing else to talk about. I think I'm ready to give my score.
I'm trying to
Um,
think. Is there anything else that stuck out to me? I like Barlow as a character. He was kind of cool. He was very chill, just showed up. And like it was cool at the end when he was like more of a friend with Maqui instead of just like a passing acquaintance. That was
yeah,
cool.
it's kind of a mysterious dude.
Lorf's got to
Mysterious,
stick
but also
together.
what?
Yeah.
Lorf's got to stick together.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't have anything else to talk about.
Yeah. I'll just go ahead and give my score. I do like this movie. It's weird in my mind because there's some things that are just outstanding. Basically everything around Maquia is really really good, and everything that doesn't involve Maquia, um, not so good. So there's a lot of a lot of character development. I think is really well executed. Just the theme is really interesting, and it gives you a lot to think about, which not every anime does. A lot of anime movies you'll watch, or at least the ones that I've watched, are more about fighting or they're funny or I don't know. This one really tugged on your heartstrings, and it did it in a very relatable way, which is kind of rare. And geez, God, I'd probably give it an eight. I'd give it an eight. It really has like some really strong messages, but there's so many distractions. At one point, I did lose my interest, but there's a lot of beauty in this story that I think everyone can relate to, and it's definitely worth a watch if you, especially if you're into kind of that genre of anime movies that's pretty popular right now. A silent voice, your name kind of vibe, very very pretty looking, very touching stories. It's definitely one of those, and it's worth a watch. So 8 out of 10.
I'd
Yeah, I'd probably also
say.
give this an eight. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, basically, like, I would also give it an eight. Like, I really like it. It's like I wouldn't even say like I'm a fan of like the like melodramatic stuff like in general, but like the fact that like this has like such like it's not cheap drama, it's like it's like a fundamental like very relatable, like everybody can relate to the feelings of like the relationship that like a mother has with her child, and it just like the twist that it has makes it like really tragic with her not being able to age and like die before her son does. So yeah, like really really touching, and like I gotta respect like a movie like that can like make me cry as hard as this one did. It's pretty rare, so like I definitely give it points for that because clearly it was doing something right. Like I definitely was invested in like the relationship between mother and son here. But yeah, like we said, there's kind of a lot of like fluff around it that I feel like doesn't really need to be there, or like could have been shortened, like tightened up. So like it's not great, but it's really really good. So yeah, I'd give it like an eight.
I'd probably give it like an 8.5. I really liked it. I don't know, just like my gut reaction after watching, I was like, damn, I'd definitely recommend this movie. It was good. Yeah, there's like characters that either need less development or more development, which was kind of weird, but overall, I think definitely could benefit from being longer. Like a 12 or 24 episode anime would be pretty good, pretty cool, where you could actually get more involved in everything that they wanted to get involved in. But the plot, like the whole plot with the kingdom and stuff, was relatively uninteresting, but also like I think I mentioned earlier, I don't think I ever really like felt pulled out of the world or like of the Maquia storyline because of it. Um, and like the whole storyline around Maquia and her son were pretty great. Yeah, I think my main takeaway was just like the character development of some people was just kind of weird. Yeah, 8.5 probably.
All right. I think that's it for Maqui. Definitely an interesting movie for sure. Follow us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, and that wraps it up for us. I guess we're signing off.
See you next time.
Peace.